Welcome to Wiser Dialogue, conversations with women of color about issues, policies, and research that impact our lives. Today, my guest is Antoinette Ayers, who is an executive coach and trainer and partner with Strategic Corporate Solutions. Welcome, Toni.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, definitely my pleasure. So it's 2020, it's a new year. There's going to be a lot of talk about change. We're going to elect a president, so we might have some change there, we may not. A lot of folks are going to be encouraged to make changes in their personal lives. And one of the things that I hope that we'll be able to talk about and address is, what's the role of an executive coach and how an executive coach can be helpful for Asian, Black, Hispanic, and Native American women who are looking to make professional changes in the year 2020. Let's start, Toni, by having you tell us just a little bit about what's an executive coach.
Well, so many things. And first, I just want to acknowledge, yes, this time of year, people are so much thinking about, especially in a new decade, right? Where do I want to go? What's happened? Where am I at right now? And there can be a lot of anxiety and stress. We were talking about that earlier around that. And the other thing we see as coaches is people will take their goals and kind of shame themselves with them. I'm afraid to set them. They're concerned about whether they're going to actually make it happen or not. And so to your question about what is an executive coach, I love this analogy about where the name coaching came from to begin with, which is really about, the old coach vehicles, the old coaches that were pulled by horses to take you from one place to the next, to move you from where you are now to where you want to go. And so if you think about coaching from that perspective and even your goals, right? Things that you want to do in 2020 or things that you even want to do today, coaches help you to get from one place to the next. And there's lots of other pieces in it, right? There's an important relationship. There is lots of self-discovery in coaching and lots of learning.
So you hit something right there when you said that self-discovery, because self-discovery can be hard, and especially when you have to say that out loud to someone else. And so, as I was doing a little bit of research before this conversation, one of the things that I saw is that, you really have to acknowledge where you need help. And when I think about conversations in certain communities, and especially in the Black community, Black women, you got to be, a strong Black woman. You don't really have the space to acknowledge where you have weaknesses to yourself, much less saying that out to somebody else. So as we're talking about that self-discovery, how do you get a person to get over that, and how do we do the self-discovery within the context of the stereotypes that our communities have?
It's such a great question. And, so again, there are so many pieces around coaching, and probably the first and foremost piece for people to understand is that the person who wants to grow, because coaching is about growth and about development and, again, getting somewhere where you want to be. And so it's important that the person is interested and engaged and they want to do this. Coaching is not something that you give or put on someone that doesn't want it. So how do we get there in our community? One of the first things is to I think, first, to understand the value in coaching. When I got into this more than 20 years ago, there wasn't really any research, right, about this working. People were wondering what it was. And the more progressive organizations were giving this to their top leaders. Why were they giving it to their top leaders? Because they were having them go from one place to the next, meaning they were already doing really well, and then they were excelling beyond even where they thought they could. So now we have the research to do that. So I think one way our community can look at that a little bit differently is to think, hey, if I want to excel beyond where I'm at, what are other people doing? And then to discover that we are doing this in our community, maybe not at the same rate. Maybe, we're not finding coaches that we can connect with, because that's a really important piece. And so one thing I would say is to make sure that you find someone that you're comfortable with, that you feel like you can connect with, that you trust, that will also challenge you. You don't necessarily want someone that's going to make it easy for you, right? Because if you're going into coaching, you're wanting to typically stretch beyond where you can get yourself, right? Again, if we go back to that analogy, we're getting in this coach cart for a reason, because, maybe it's further than we want to walk or something. So I would say, look around and find where people like you are doing this, because when I'm working with this community, what I find is people, and women in particular, I work with a group, women of color, and we work together in a coaching group within a specific organization. And the biggest thing is that affirmation that you're not alone, that there are other women of color that want to challenge themselves, are okay working with coaches, and are okay to be vulnerable, and that we don't have to put our vulnerabilities out there for everyone to see, but we can put them out there with someone that we trust, and then start discovering where we can grow and where we want to go. And, create that path. A coach is going to create that path with you.
I think you said something there that's real important, and that is about trust, right? That
Yes.
in any coaching mentor relationship, there has to be a good deal of trust, because you're building a partnership to help you, as you were saying, getting from one place to another. But you also said something that I hear a lot, is this notion of realizing that you're not alone, right? That you're not in this space by yourself. Can you talk a little bit about why you find in the work that you do that is so important?
Yeah, I think that, again, really is one of a super important piece for people to understand. And the first thing is that it's normal, just like what you're saying. The fact that you're saying everybody is going through something, I think often we get in our own heads, not unusual. And a coach who's worked with a ton of people is just going to be able to affirm for you that, listen, we see this kind of thing all the time. I may be experiencing it myself, but in our professional circles, this is not unusual. And when we can take information like that and move it aside so that we can focus on where you want to go. And the beauty of it is it's typically a one-on-one relationship, although let me say this, group coaching is becoming more and more popular. It's more affordable. It also reinforces this whole piece around not being alone. So at some point, you're coaching each other. Again, that relationship, the trust, the ability to feel comfortable is super important if you're going to move into group coaching. The other thing a coach will do is, talking about, is this normal, what I'm going through? I may very well have you go out and ask 10 of your colleagues or confidants, do you feel this? Because the other thing that we're seeing, I think, in society today is sort of with our technology and the way that we live in our homes, in our communities, where we're kind of, sectioned off more, we're not spending as much time together in person, is this lack of community and this lack of being vulnerable with one another, which again allows us to be in our head, and we lose sight of the fact that other people may be struggling in similar areas.
I do see that there is a population of folks where having a community is so very important for them in terms of their well-being and their progression. Is there a way to sort of get people to rethink community?
Another thing that we talk about a lot in coaching is naming it. So I love the fact that you're talking about, hey, is there a way to sort of rename community or rethink community? I think with technology that it's happening. And I think that, I think especially, I mean, look at what we're doing.
That's right. Yes.
We're I don't know how we're across town from each other. We're not out of state, but we're on camera. Listen, I've gone from coaching where we did coaching, most of our coaching in person, to frankly, the majority of coaching over the phone. Now you're seeing a lot of this. We're kind of swinging back around to look at what we can see with our facial expressions. We can, just by being on camera. And so now I think we're using technology to do a lot more of this, like connecting visually. I work with a corporate group, and also my women of color group. We get on Zoom and connect. And it is a big difference from being on the phone. And we're all across the country, right? Mm-hmm. We're in every corner, and getting on and being able to see each other's facial expressions, or having 15 women on a call that look like you in some shape, form, or fashion, and you're sharing something that's important to you or a struggle that you've had, and they're nodding like you are right now. It's affirming. And then, you may go back to your office and there's no one there that looks like you, but you've been rejuvenated, you've been affirmed, you've been encouraged, you've been challenged and comfortable to sort of toot your horn and be able to move on with your day and continue knowing that there are other people out there that are successful, that you can model after, and those people don't come along with their successes without challenges as well.
You are doing such a great job in terms of helping me segue into the next part that I want to ask you about. And you just said it, toot your horn. OMG. I recently sent out a tweet that was talking about the ways in which my work had not been acknowledged. And I really had to struggle with that, right? Like, how do you say this in a way that you don't seem angry? And one of the things that I said was, it is a reminder for me that to do a better job promoting the work that is published in a journal that I'm the co-editor of, and to promote my work. And it's one of those that's really hard for me, because I see people self-promote and woo, this is what I've just done. And my board is always on me about being more vocal and making sure I put it on Twitter and Facebook where I'm going and what I'm doing. And it just drives me to drink. But I know that it is a necessary part of advancement, that people need to know that you're out there and that you're doing things. And that, I think more importantly, what it shows is that other people find value in your intellectual contribution to a space. And so can you talk a little bit about how you encourage people, either how you encourage people to self-promote, or the ways that if I'm looking at an executive coach, how do I ask my coach for strategies around doing a better job of self-promoting?
Yes, I love this topic, because I'm going to go back to my women of color group. And this is a topic that came up, and this really folds really well into coaching, in that, again, coaching is so individualized, right? It's about finding the best way for you to move from A to B. So if A to B now is, how do I take what I'm doing and promote it or get recognition? Okay, because it sort of shows up in all different forms. In the group that I'm working with, there, again, the first piece of value that happened is that somebody named it and felt comfortable enough naming the fact that, you know what, I'm doing these different things, and I think I might be imagining this, but I'm not getting the recognition that I'm seeing my parts are getting. And am I imagining this? And so again, one is naming it. And I'll go on a little sidetrack, but there's just great neuroscience research now that shows the reduction in stress in our brain. They can track the chemicals now about what happens when we do things like name it, give it a name, right? To sort of reduce the stress around it. And then creating some action around it. Now, these are all things that you're going to do in coaching. The other thing is then let's define what's important to you about that, because how you want to self-promote may be very different than how I want to self-promote. And what a coach is going to do is really find out, well, so what is that going to do for you? And what does it look like? What does self-promotion look like for you? So for some people, it may be they want their family and their friends and their circle to know about it. For other people, they may want the recognition within the office. For others, it could be much broader. It could be public recognition, national recognition, international recognition. And then again, we would drill down and figure out what makes that important. Because once we find out what the driving force is for you, what your vision is for self-promotion, then we can go after it in a way and make sure that we're keeping that carrot out there in front of you as to why you're doing it, because there may be some bumps and stumbles along the way. There will be things that you run up against, and we'll have to try it a different way. But mostly I think it's important to personalize that to each person. Now, I don't want that to get buried in the fact that I am seeing a theme of this going on with, I would say, women of color at least feeling that way. Okay. That,
tell me a little bit.
Well, and I should not just say self-promotion, but I would say recognition. Okay. So one of the things I love that a person said in our group was that we don't really want to sit around and complain about this. Let's figure out what we can do.
Yes.
So don't expect it to just happen for you. If this is important to you, then let's figure out how you can self-promote. And then again, you would walk through these steps and these questions that I just mentioned to you about, creating that for yourself. And I'll say this, just because we started this off talking about a new decade and what's important in the year, it's the same thing I would say about people setting goals, right? And where they want to go. And this very much could be a goal for somebody in the next decade or in the next year. And I think for some people that can be really overwhelming because there's lots of methods out there, right? Lots of ways to do these things. And again, I think what me and my partners really talk with our clients about is figure out what works for you, right? So you can do quick goal setting and be very effective. You can do something that takes a little more time and a little more depth and a little more reflection and still be effective. Or for another person, it could be deep reflection and exploring the whys and what happened previously and what worked and what didn't work and do it that way. So with all of these topics that we're talking about, rather than running for the latest and the greatest that's out there around goal setting, a coach is going to stop and ask you, what works best for you? What feels most appealing? Is it more important for you to go into some detail and spend some time reflecting? For some people, that's really important. For others, they want to get to it and they want to do the wheel, right? That has all the areas of life on it. And we do some quick goals around it. So I feel like that's the thread that's going to run through a lot of these questions, is how to personalize some of these issues and really think about the best way for you to do it. That's what you're going to see in working with a coach. I think even if you're working within a group.
I think you wrapped that up very nicely. But again, the emphasis being on it's personalized, what's comfortable for you, If you aren't coming into the relationship with the coach being open and honest, it is really going to impede the ways in which a coach can help you, and also willing to do some of that work that you're talking about, self-reflection. This brings us to a really good closing point. One of the things I like to ask all of my guests, and that is, it doesn't matter what the conversation is, what the profession, there is usually a myth, right? There is something that is thought about coaching that is being spread or that you encounter when you meet people that's not true. So tell me what that myth is, and then tell me why it's not true.
Wow, that's great. So the thing is I think there are lots of myths about coaching. I may grab two that run into that I think overlap a little bit. In the professional world, there are some organizations that use the term coaching as almost a remediation. You've done something wrong, and we're going to send you to coaching to fix you, right? The other thing that I think coaching, and perhaps not so much anymore, but I still think that it comes out there, is that coaching is therapy. Coaching is not therapy, but it can be therapeutic.
Toni, I want to thank you for being my guest. Again, my guest is Antoinette Ayers, who is an executive coach and trainer with Strategic Corporate Solutions. You have been watching Wiser Dialogue, The Missing Viewpoint.